Hello and welcome back to the R Model Railway series. Well, as you can see, we've got clear baseboard. All we need now is for some track to turn up and we can start laying. Oh, that might be it now. I'll go and find out and see you in a minute. Well, a nice big box has been delivered by the postman, so we should be able to start laying some track. Before I do that, let's talk about what we're going to look at in this video. As well as the track laying, we're also going to start building our first model, and that's going to be a Scalescene free kit that was downloaded. And in fact, whilst I'm opening the box and getting all the track out and checking the contents, let's go over to the workbench and see how we're getting on with building the model. Hi, well, that looks as if the track laying is going according to the plan. I expect I'll be needed over there when we come to do the wiring. However, for now, back at the workbench, and it's time to have a look at doing a little bit of modelling. I suppose we've looked at the railway, now it's the modelling bit of the railway. And I must admit, this is the bit that does concern me. I look at other people's model railways and in the magazines and online, and I must admit, I'm a bit daunted by the detail and some of the skills of many of the model railways. However, so where am I going to start? Well, I've decided to have a go at hopefully a fairly simple model, and I'm going to use one of the Scalescenes free downloads, and it's going to be the Weybridge or coal office. I'm probably going to turn it into the coal office because if you remember from the last video, the intention is to have a small coal yard at the back of Little Drawling station. So time to crack on, and I'll see how I get on over the next couple of weeks. Well, here is the model that we're going to be starting with. As I say, it's the coal office that we're going to be doing. So we'll quickly have a look at the instructions and then we'll begin. Well, as I say, the model that I'm starting with then is a free download from Scalescenes, so it doesn't cost anything to download, which is probably why I'm starting with this one, because it means that it will make it relatively, if it goes wrong, it will be relatively cheap, I hope, and I'll be able to have another go, although I must admit I had none of the equipment to do this, so there's been a little bit of cost involved in terms of doing starting off. So, but as I build more of the models, it should gradually work out cheaper. So it comes with instructions, and there are 3 pages of instructions. They look reasonably detailed, and I've had a read through them. And then the other bit of the download is the actual model itself, or the bits of the model that you can download, and that comes on 2 sheets, so more instructions than there are actual sheets. And the sheets are marked with what you need to do to them. So the top sheet here, this first sheet, as you can see, so it says cut along the line, and anything above there is for printing only. It doesn't need to be, so this area here doesn't need to actually be glued to anything at this stage, as I understand it. Although I expect we'll have to glue it at some stage, but at the moment it's just print only. And then below this is for light card, and then below that we've got the heavy card and then medium card. So what I'll do is I'm going to cut them into those areas, and then we'll start to stick the card bits to the various bits of card that we need. So I shall get on with that now. So the notes say that you should stick the paper to the card using a glue stick, so I've got one here, and we'll start doing this to the 3 sets. So one to the heavy card, one to the medium card, and one to the light card. A few bubbles in there, let's see if we can get rid of the bubbles. Right, what I should do now is put a bit of weight on that and then do the others. So I've managed to cut the windows out, reasonably successful. One of the bars has come away a little bit, but I'm hoping when I come to glue it that won't look too bad. Otherwise I will pre-print it and try again. It was quite tricky cutting the little tiny squares out, and I ended up using a magnifying glass to try and get as close to where it needed to be as possible. It now says I need to glue this to some film, some clear film. I've got some clear film over here. I've placed it on a bit of card so that makes it easier, slightly easier to see. And it says glue it relatively carefully. So I think what I'm going to try and do is, and I'm not sure if this will work, is to place the glue onto the windows rather than to the acetate, and I'm going to use a small cocktail stick to do this. So let me just set that up, and once I've done that, I'm not sure how easy this is for you to see, but so I've put a tiny little bit of just standard PVA glue onto a thing here, a little bit of PVA glue, and I'm just going to try and get some on the end of the cocktail stick and just run that around the window frame so that I'm not putting too much on. What I don't want it to do is, once I've done it, is for it to spill out onto the acetate, but on the other hand I need to make sure I've got enough on to cover it, I suppose. So I'm hoping when I press it down it will spread itself out a little bit. Never done this before, so once again a new start and a new try. I'm just going to try and put a little tiny drop on the bar that runs across the middle. There we go, let's try the other one now. I don't know whether this would have been easier with a paintbrush, a small paintbrush. However, we will learn, and if anybody has any ideas of that the easiest way to do this, then do shout me and let me know. And also, I'm not sure whether the PVA glue is the best thing to use for this. I've decided that it's I've got to try and get enough on there for it to stick to the acetate. Put a tiny bit more on here because it doesn't seem to be very much on there. That will do. And let's try, this is the one that got itself just a little bit damaged. So there we go, let's try that. Got the clear film here. Actually, now looking at it in the light, it looks like I've probably got a little bit too much along there, so let's try and spread that out a bit. And we'll stick that onto the acetate carefully. Now, I think that one of the bits here is going to be getting rid of the bubbles. Move it away from the edge of the... I'll just tap that bit down. I'll move that into position in a second, I think. There, and I'll just see if I can... There's a little bit of glue that's come through, but I'm hoping that as we go through that, this one here is the one that's a bit moved out to position. Let's see if I can squash him down a bit. There is a fair bit of glue come underneath, which is a bit annoying. Right, I'm going to leave that. We'll leave that to dry, and then we can cut the acetate back out. So it's now time to do a little bit more cutting, and I'm going to cut out the external sidewalls cover layer. That's what it's telling me to do. So interestingly enough, one of the things I almost missed on this was that I was trying to work out where this went, because on the diagram it shows it slightly different, but I missed that there's a line here that says you need to cut through there. So what I'm going to do is cut it out, and then I'll do the cuts through the centre. That to that cut out. I'm assuming I need to cut the centre out as well, so I'm going to do that. Yeah. I think I've done that. We'll have to have a look once I put it on, we'll have a look then. Put that to one side, and I'll go and get cut out the corresponding piece. And the sidewalls are down here. So let's just cut those out first. I need to do a little bit of well, here are the two first external walls done, so I think they're the side, also the sort of gabled end, I suppose, type piece. Reasonably happy with them. I had to file down the edges, and to file down the edges I just used a, I suppose it's a nail filey type thing, so one of these 4 small nail sanders, so I use one of those. It does appear to have worked alright. I'm just hoping it's all going to stick nicely now, so there we are. I shall now start on the other bits. So before we have a look at how far we've got on the model, I'm just going to glue the internal fire piece to the internal fire card. So I shall do that now, and I'm doing it in the way that I shall use the Pritt stick in order to do it, or the glue stick in order to do it. Make sure there's plenty on there. As you can see, I've already folded this round a little bit just to make sure that it did fit okay. And what I shall do now is just slide him into position, making sure that he's in the right place. And then I'm just going to press that down a little bit. And then what I will do is place a little bit of the PVA into a small pot here, as you can see. What I tend to do is just put a little tiny bit into there, and then using the cocktail stick, and I'm just going to run a little bit of glue along the edge here. It won't need too much, and if I put it there when I fold over, I'll put a little bit down where the fold is. I've found this works quite well using the cocktail stick, and when I fold that over it should, in theory, stick down. Oh, it's just moved off a little bit. Just move that out of the way while we do this. So I'm just going to rub that over like that. And there we go. Do it like that. Have a quick look. There's a little bit of overhang at the bottom which I'm going to have to trim off, I think, at some stage. But otherwise that does seem to have worked. So, there we are. What I'll do now is I shall go and grab the rest of the bits that we've got so far, and I'll show you how far we've got at the moment. So as you can see, I've done the back wall here. It was relatively easy, and then I've done the front wall here. The door came up reasonably easy as well, and again I used the cocktail stick method to glue around the edges of the door and then put the door on, rather than try and put a whole load of glue over the back of the piece. I found that the easiest way of doing that. This is the internal and external wall joined together. The cuttings seem to have gone okay. I might need to file one of these pieces down just a fraction. One appears to be slightly higher than the other. And then there's the other wall, both the internal wall and the external wall. I did find cutting the windows out probably amongst the most difficult bits to do, the windows here. And I think it was a bit of a struggle. What it says on the instructions is to cut from the corners down on any piece. So take this chimney piece here, so to cut from there that way and then cut from there that way, which I must admit does make life a lot easier. However, it's very difficult when you've got the window, because as you can imagine it's quite difficult to cut. And there were two windows to cut out. And the other thing that I found was then when you were trying to file it just to get it smooth around the inside, is quite often the edges, I don't know if you can probably see it best here, but the edges where the paper is glued to the card tends to fray a little bit, and it has done just there. The windows weren't too bad in order to fit, so I must admit the instructions didn't appear totally easy for me to follow. I expect anybody else would have probably found them relatively easy, but there were two window pieces, and it took me a little while to work out that one attaches to the front wall bit and one attached to the back of the internal wall bit. So actually, although it only looks like there's only a single window frame in there, there's actually two, and you can probably see it there, that there is a slight gap where the window is pushing the two pieces out. I'm assuming once we get the roof on, that won't show quite so much. Well, that's as far as I've got so far. So what I'll do is I shall have a look at what the next bit of the instruction says I need to do, and I shall get on with that. Well, there's the internal chimney piece glued to the internal bit of wall. That's that bit done. It doesn't look too bad. Just going to have a quick check with the square to make sure that it's not too badly off in terms of squareness. That's okay, I think. It's a little bit off, but it's not too bad. So let me just get rid of this. I just need to put a bit of pressure on there now to make sure that it does glue. I should go and get some weights and just whilst that's gluing, the next thing I need to do is to cut out this internal chimney bit. Now, probably offer me an opportunity just to show how I do this. Now, I don't sure know whether this is the right way of doing it or not, but you'll see on here, or you should be able to see just here, that there are some blue dotted lines that tell you need to fold along there. Well, of course, once you've cut this out, you can't see where they are. So what I've tended to do is to cut beyond the folds initially. I'll just take this out here. A bit of birdseed there. So I'll just get rid of that. Now I can cut straight along here. So once I've done that, I'll just move these to one side so I don't lose them. Once I've done that, what I now do is just fold these around. So I've got the fold now in the right place, and now I can finish cutting it out. So now I'll cut the edges out knowing where the fold should be. It doesn't say that in the book, but it just seemed, I suppose, a fairly obvious thing to do. So if anybody has any better ideas of how to do that, please do let me know in the comments. I'm sure there are much easier ways of doing this. And any easier way of doing it is always appreciated, not to be in much of a model. It has taken me a fair while to get to where I am. I don't have very much time in the evening to do the model making, so I tend to do it just about half an hour to an hour every night. What that does allow me to do though is it gives me plenty of time to allow everything to dry, and means I'm not getting really impatient and trying to rush on whilst bits are drying. So like for example the piece that I just did, the chimney, because I need to finish very shortly and get on with some other stuff. It gives that time to work. And I don't know whether you can see this here, but this is what I mean by it says in the thing to cut from the inside outwards. So I just need to work out exactly where the edge of that is. You can see it there. And then work from there to the outside edge rather than trying to work in. I'm sure to experienced model makers that's fairly obvious, but to me it was quite a useful little tip on the instructions, and it certainly has helped me. In the right place, there we go. So there you are. I've now managed to do that bit. This is the external chimney bit. Now the instructions are very clear, and it says do not glue above these lines here. So this bit gets glued initially, and then I think this can get wrapped around the external bit of the chimney. So that's lower half and that's the top half. So, but I'm waiting for the chimney piece to dry now, the the piece that I've just glued on. I'm using the bit that this goes to as a counterbalance for it in terms of the weight, so it's not all weighted on one side. I'm using it to help set that up. So what I should do is, while we're waiting for that to dry, we'll go back and have a look at how we're getting on with the track laying. Well, I've got it all out and it all appears to be here. So plenty of points and some flexi track that I will need to cut the sides. I also got some track fixing pins. What I haven't managed to get hold of so far is the either the insulated joiners for the points or some rail joiners for these. So it's probably going to take me another couple of days to get hold of those. So it may well be that in this video we won't actually cover that. I think I've got enough points to cover the layout, or at least start laying it out in accordance with the track plan that we looked in the last video. So I'll just move some of this out of the way and we'll have a quick look at what that track plan was, just to remind ourselves. So for those of you who can remember the last video, or seen the last video, here's the layout that I'm looking at, and this is based on Ensham, which is on the Fairford, was on the old Fairford line, the Oxford to Fairford branch line, which is a sort of area that I'm planning to model here, and I'm looking to model this something very similar to this. The reason why is it gave me some fairly interesting things. If there's a level crossing, it offers me the opportunity to do some shunting, and for those of you who have watched the previous videos know that I'm quite keen on the shunting aspect, so it offers me an opportunity to do that. But I'm going to have adapted it very slightly, and I've been working on the track plan since you saw the last version of it. As I say, I'm very grateful to the people who set up the website for the Fairford, because it gives you lots and lots of ideas. It's certainly in terms of some of the modelling aspects of the various bits and pieces. So this is generally what I'm hoping to reproduce, and here's the version I've done in terms of the track plan that I'm looking at. So it almost sort of models it. As you can see, there's the main running line that runs here into the station. So the station would be somewhere around about here, with the level crossing somewhere around about here. This is the goods area. This here is a spare one. I'm going to put I'm going to put some coal loading bays here, and hopefully if the Scalescene model of the coal office, that would go somewhere around here. I will probably, it's a station building here, probably put some houses here and the road running down there. And then I've added an extra line here, which is slightly different to the one on the original track plan of Ensham. As you can see, there's an extra running line here, and I'm hoping to put just a single goods shed here. I may extend that slightly wider. So that's the intention. What I'm going to do now is see how this might fit out on the baseboard that I've got. This is the dimensions of the baseboard, so you can see it fills most of it. I've not had it running straight across here. I've tried to put it at a bit of an angle. It gives me slightly more room, but also I think it makes it slightly more interesting in terms of the model. It looks more like the model's been placed, the tracks actually exist there rather than just following the line of the baseboard. So there we go. What I'll do now is I'll start trying to work out where the points are going to go, and I clearly need to watch out for the boards that sit underneath. I'm hoping I won't have too much conflict, but we're going to see whether we can start laying those out now. Well, using the track plan, I've tried to see whether it'll work or not, and I've laid the points and some of the track where I expect it to go. What I'll do now is I'll just quickly run through that so that we can see what it looks like, and at the same time I'll indicate where I think it is on the track plan. So this here is the, I suppose, the upside of the track, the side that's going to run along and into Oxford Station. So, and the first point there. Now I'm not sure whether the level crossing will go, I think it's going to go just to the left hand side as we're looking at it of the point, so the downside of the point. It's roughly just in front of where the Ginty is sat at the moment. So what I've also done is placed two, I think they're Mark 1 carriages on, so that I can see roughly where I think the platform will need to be to hold two Mark 1 carriages. So if we move along, you can see that there now. So that's where the two Mark 1s are, and we can see, I'll just zoom in a fraction. So, and then running behind the two Mark 1s, or where the platform is going to be, is the goods yard. It won't be quite as long as that, and I'm not sure whether it ought to be maybe coming down a little bit closer to where the platform's going to be, but I'll have a look at that once I've set it. It will be flexi track, so I should be able to do that relatively easy. And behind it, where the model is, where the drawing of the track plan is where the small coal yard's going to be, and there's a line that runs into there. And then if we go up, we can see the points, rather complicated point section just here. I shall zoom in again as best I can. So it's not quite joined up yet, but as you can see, the point section does appear to work. So there's a couple of junctions there that lead through to the coal yard and to the goods yard, and then there's a small sort of, I suppose, passing loop that leads back onto the main running line. And then just behind that, we've got the line that will continue to run straight through on the up line, and then the passing loop for the down line running directly behind it. And then if I go round, we can see the end of the track there, and that's where it all then joins back up again. Where I've placed the points at the moment, there isn't any obvious problem with the wood that goes underneath the baseboard to strengthen it, to hold it in place, other than perhaps one point, which is at that far end, that the electro-frog fitting may just be a bit tight on the board, but I'll need to look at that when I come to drill the holes. And then of course to the far side, the line that sort of runs in and ends over there is the loco shed. That's where there'll be a shed there for one of the locos to go into. So that's where the plan is. Like I say, at the moment I've not got the joiners, so I'm not going to start actually laying it and fixing it into place until I've got the joiners. And then I also need to, of course, solder up the points. As I'm using the electrofrog points, I need to do some soldering up on that. So as soon as I've got the other bits, we'll come back and have another look at laying the... It does look as if the track laying is going to take a bit longer than we're going to have time for in this video, but I'm sure it will proceed nicely. Best not to rush this, I'm guessing. Best to try and do it correctly, make sure we've got all the right bits before we start. But at least the track plan looks as if it's going to work, and we would welcome any comments on that. I thought I'd just show you where we've got to so far with the little coal office. So we've joined the bits together. It's all fitted reasonably well. Once I did this, I used PVA glue to join it together rather than the Pritt stick, and that seems to have worked. And I suppose being a novice modeller, I got to the stage where I started fiddling to make sure all the walls were in place, and it ended up making it look worse than it was. So in the end I got it to how I wanted it to look roughly, and then just left it, and I suspect that's probably a lesson learned, that actually fiddling with it ends up making it look worse than it might have done originally. What I'm now going to do is to fit the I suppose the roof part of here, the bit that's going to go across here. Now when I looked at the instructions on this, it didn't I had to read them a few times. I say it wasn't clear. It was probably me not reading them rather than it not being clear, as always. Because when I went to, I placed this on and then glued it on, did all that, and then when I went to look, I thought this is going to be too big, and I better trim it down. Actually, I tried to check fit it before I put the top on, and I was thinking I'm probably going to need to trim it down a little bit before I put this on, but then I thought, no, I'll do it the way it says on the instructions, fitted this, and it was only then that I read that we need to remove this hatch bit here, these hatch bit here. And I'm assuming that once I've removed the hatch bits with a little bit of filing, that actually that'll then just drop in. And had I cut it off beforehand, it would have actually been too small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these hatch bits out and then try and fit it. And I'll be back once I've cut it. Well, as you can see, we've fitted the roof now. And once we did cut the little bits out around the sides here, it did fit reasonably well. It needed a little bit of filing down around the chimney area. So the cutout for the chimney needed a little bit of filing, and it also needed a little bit of filing here. And in fact, it's still a little bit high enough. I'm going to have to take that bit down very slightly. But that's all fitted, coming on reasonably well, or it's come on reasonably well. For a first go, I'm reasonably pleased with how that's turned out. And as we progress through the series, hopefully this will be finished fairly shortly. Well, that's just about all we've got time for this month, and I'm sorry we didn't manage to get any of the track laid and powered up enough to be able to see any trains running across it. Of course, over the coming weeks, we'll finish laying the track, or we'll start laying it and finish laying it, and hopefully get some power to it and tested. So we should be able to see that in the next video. Before I go, I've just got one final thing, and that is that I've recently subscribed to Model Rail, and partly because that was one of the first magazines that I picked up when I started thinking about building a model railway, and I've kept it ever since. And I did think that as I was buying it every month, it would be cheaper to take out the subscription. And when I took out the subscription, there was a normal promotional thing that came up. That wasn't the reason for me taking it out, but I ticked the box for the promotion, and lo and behold, about 3 or 4 days later, the promotional gift turned up, and I must say I was very, very pleased with it. It was 4 Oxford die-cast models, and pretty much I think they fit fairly fit in fairly well with the era that I'm going to do. I think so anyway. I will need to do a little bit of research to double check that these all fit roughly with my sort of mid-late 50s, early to mid-60s era. What I wanted to do though is I'll just leave you with a few images of the models that came, and let me know what you think. But until then, I'll see you next month.